Hello, and welcome to this Google Digital Garage series, part of the Local Enterprise Office Look for Local campaign. Look for Local aims to highlight small Irish businesses in every sector, asking that the public look to support companies in their own locality when purchasing goods and services. This Garage series has been designed to prepare small businesses for the reopening of the economy and to ensure that they are in a strong position to take advantage of the huge move to online that has taken place since the pandemic first began. This is a series of expert-led webinars, and each one is worth watching. If you miss one, they will be available online once the series is finished. There will also be a marketing toolkit and a national database of companies available. Contact your local Leo for details. Thousands of small businesses across the country have already availed of the Local Enterprise Trading Online Voucher scheme. These vouchers are designed to assist small businesses with up to 10 employees to trade more online, boost their sales. Has not yet availed of a voucher, then please speak to your Leo about how it can support your online success. Leos across the country are running a wide range of mentoring and training supports for businesses to help them get back up and running over the summer months. So check with your Leo to see what events they are running and how they can support you. This exciting partnership with Google is part of this summer's Local Enterprise Office Look for Local campaign that will be running in July. It will spotlight Leo clients from across the country and encourage everyone to look for local when they are buying goods and services. If you would like to get more information on the Look for Local campaign or how to get involved, then please contact your local enterprise office. Thank you very much and enjoy the webinar.
Welcome everyone to today's Google Digital Garage training session on getting started with search engine optimization, probably better known as SEO. As we've just heard, today's webinar is a collaboration between Google Digital Garage and the local enterprise offices. This is the third in a series of 5. If you have missed the previous 2 or you'd like to catch up on them again, even if you did attend, you can watch those over on the local enterprise office YouTube channel. And if you'd like to, we'd love to see you join us again for the next 2 in the series. We're halfway through at the moment, and they'll be on websites and analytics. These are all part of the upcoming Look for Local campaign, which aims to help your business prepare to make the most of all opportunities as the economy reopens. My name's Emma. I'm a trainer for Google's skills training program, Google Digital Garage. We also have Sarah here with us today. You can't see her on your screen, but she is there in the chat. I'm sure some of you have already said hello to her there as well. Great to have the chat open because she'll be sharing some useful links for you as we go through. Any resources or tools that we mention will be shared there for you to check out later. And she'll also be keeping an eye out for your comments and questions. So answering some of the questions, but also getting some of them through to me, as we'll have a few Q&As as we go through. If there's more than one Sarah with us today, you can identify her by the little blue spanner next to her name. So do say hello. And while you're all introducing yourselves in the chat, I'm just going to run through some very quick housekeeping before we get started. Firstly, if at any point you have any problems viewing the webinar, if the audio or video goes out of sync or any other issues, if you could try refreshing, that normally fixes any issues that could be occurring. And do let us know in the chat if you have any ongoing problems with video or audio at all. If you'd like to join the chat and you haven't yet, you can do so using the button you'll see to sign in or create an account. Either on the right if you're on desktop, or if you're on mobile, it will be below this video. You might need to scroll down a little bit if you're on mobile. If you already see the chat, great, you're already signed in. If not, you can either sign into an existing account, or you can quickly create a YouTube account so you can join in the chat today and ask any questions you have as we go through. So please do fire away with your questions throughout. Don't feel like you have to wait for Q&A to pop up, and we will be taking note of your questions as we go. And if you would like to check out the rest of the webinar schedule and the series, do check out the link in the description below this video, and Sarah will be able to share that in the chat as well. We'll mention that again at the end if you want to sign up for the next one, which is on websites next week. And we would like to share another resource for you today, which is the new Google for Small Business website, which is a one-stop shop for products, training, tools and resources to help move your business forward. That includes a simple step-by-step online success guide for helping you to show up on Google, which is exactly what we'll be covering today, creating or improving a website, and reaching more customers and building loyalty. So Sarah will be able to share a link for that as well. And it's also in the description below this video, so you can grab that link at any time if you want to check that out. And lastly, a question we always get, will you be able to see the slides or this video afterwards, or do you need to take a lot of notes? Well, you will have access to the slides. We'll have a feedback form. If you fill that in towards the end, we'll share the link for you then. You'll be able to access this in PDF format. And you can also rewatch today's video using, I think it's the link that you used to join today as well. So do take notes, but you will be able to revisit the content in your own time as well. So on to today's topic, which is SEO. We're going to help you focus on how search engines work and really understand what's going on there behind the scenes. Then we'll look at how to get started with SEO, or if you've already got started, some things you might want to review. And finally, looking at some tips for optimizing your SEO strategy for success. And we'll look at what we call on-page and off-page SEO techniques. And I'll explain more what we mean by those two elements when we get to that section. So before we go to this section properly, I'd love to know, how do you currently market your goods and services to customers? What marketing channels are you using? Is SEO one of them? Are you already using that? Maybe social media, maybe email. What else do you do to market your goods and services? Now, there is a bit of a delay between me and you, so I'm going to move on and talk about understanding SEO, and then we'll come back to see what you've shared in the chat about how you currently market your goods. And that can be digital or non-digital. Let us know, how do you get in front of customers at the moment? So let's look at how search engines work, which will give us a good basis for understanding what we might need to do with SEO for the next section. So the purpose of a search engine is really to provide the most relevant search results to the searcher. It's that simple. And Google's mission is to make all information usable and available worldwide. So the information presented by search engines takes many different formats. It can help to answer questions, it can provide information. It also includes things like videos, as well as written pages, images. There's lots of different things that can appear on that search results page, as we'll see in a moment. And basically, Google wants the user, the searcher, to have the best user experience and find the most relevant results based on the thing they typed in, which we call the search query, the word or phrase that they typed in to start that search. So the system and the algorithm we're going to talk about has all been developed to aid that process, to get the most relevant results in front of that user. So if you're already creating great content for your customers that you know is useful and interesting to them, then that's a great starting point. And you might already even be appearing in search results, even if you've never thought about SEO before. So the benefits to your business from search engines, and this is whether you're looking at SEO or also search advertising, you're reaching both a local and global audience of people who are already searching for your products or services, or maybe asking questions are relevant to your industry. We'll talk about local SEO specifically a bit later on as well, and some of the tips for getting started with that. It can help you to increase footfall, so drive people in through your door, but also increase traffic to your website, again, from people who are already looking for that product or service. So you're not trying to convince somebody that they need their product or that they should go for your service. They're already looking for it. You're just trying to get in front of those people during that search journey. And it can help you then to create that communication and connection with your customers, encourage them to leave reviews on things like a business listing, but also to go to your website and get in touch with you there as well. And you get a lot of data that can help you to learn about your customers and what they tend to search for. So around trends and search patterns, maybe seasonality, depending on your industry. We'll talk more about analytics. We will talk about it a bit today, but especially in the session we have in 2 weeks' time, which will focus entirely on data and analytics. So do join us for that if that's something you're interested in. So what's happening behind the scenes when somebody makes a search is that Google's looking for the most relevant results, as we've already talked about. They're looking to provide that great user experience to the searcher. And the way they do that is using an algorithm. And that's a mathematical formula. We don't get the exact algorithm. It's not something we're told to work towards. But there are important guidelines published that help us to understand what Google considers to be important factors, but there are many, many different factors. Google engineers spend every day testing and experimenting and improving the search algorithm. And this basically helps to determine your organic ranking, so where you appear in those search results. So you might be appearing higher up the page, further down. It's not a set ranking. That algorithm is applied every single time somebody searches for each individual search. So if you hear somebody say something like, we can get you to the top of Google, there is no consistent top. You might find that the results change if you make the same search now and later on today and again tomorrow. Different people might see slightly different results because the algorithm is looking at all these different factors and trying to find the most relevant and useful information for that particular searcher. So it's worth keeping an eye on any individual updates or guidelines that are published. For example, in the past, there have been bigger updates, but there's also been smaller guidelines published as well that can help you to understand either changes that have already been made or changes that are coming up. For example, over the past few years, the move to the importance of mobile SEO and looking at the mobile performance of your site and using that as a really important factor. So keep an eye on things like the Google blogs and any SEO tools. There's a really great YouTube channel from the Google webmasters as well, Google Search Central, that often releases new guidelines and talks through any changes that are coming up. So what's going on behind the scenes? Well, firstly, the spiders, so Google spiders and robots are crawling the internet, visiting your website and of course other people's websites, and crawling through that website structure to visit as many of the pages as it can find. That information is then indexed, so saved in a search engine database. And once your page is in that index, it's effectively there for Google to draw on when somebody makes a search and decide if it's relevant to that search or not. So the first step is making sure you're getting indexed and Google knows that all your pages exist. We'll talk about how you can do that shortly. And then every time somebody searches, so step 5 and 6 are repeating multiple times every millisecond, somebody's searching for something, and the algorithm is then applied to show the most relevant results, and they're what's displayed on the search engine results page. If you're interested in more of what's going on behind the scenes, there's a really great page called How Search Works that goes through this in a bit more detail and talks through what's happening at each of these stages too. So Sarah will be able to share that in the chat if you want to save that for later to check out more of how this is actually working. And this is what the user's actually seeing. So all of that is happening behind the scenes, and this is what they see on their page. So we have the search query at the top. Of course, we've just added the color here for our benefit, but right at the top of the page, the word or the phrase that they've typed in. You might hear this called a search query, just a query, keyword, search term, it's a key phrase potentially as well. They all mean the same thing, which is the word or phrase at the top of the page that somebody has typed into a search engine. Everything else on this page is then based on that result, and the format might change depending on what's been searched for as well. But we have in this case an ads section. We've got some shopping ads at the top because we searched best compact camera for travel, product related search. So we're seeing those shopping ads, 5 images at the top. Underneath, we have a paid text ad. We might see 3 or 4 of those. We might see more again at the bottom. And we don't always see ads. It does depend on the type of search and if they're relevant. And then we have the organic search listings. So these are more the naturally occurring. That's what we mean by organic. Nobody's paying to be in this section. So these could be website results, which is what we kind of see here. Obviously, they're blanked out, but that's what will be appearing. And you might see these go a lot further down the page. Obviously, we've cut this off in the screenshot, but you might expect to see quite a few of these on that first page. And you can see different things appearing here, like images and maps listings as well, depending on what you've searched for. And this is an example of how this can look if you search for something slightly different. So the top one, we've got clothes shops near me. This is more of a local search. Instead of those ads at the top, we're actually seeing some local results instead in the maps listings and some of those, what this person was searching in Dublin. So Google's translated that near me to Dublin and is able to see exactly what's nearby their specific location. In the second search, this is another product one, just the layout slightly different here. So we've searched shoes online. And we're seeing 3 ads in the middle. Below that, where we've cut off, is where you'd see the organic results. And the shopping ads this time are over to the right-hand side. So the format can change. What you actually see on the page might change, depending on what Google thinks is the most relevant from applying that algorithm. You could also see PDFs appearing, images, videos, ads again at the bottom of the page. or you might see something completely different like news results too. So let's see if we have any questions so far. I know we've only just got started. We've got lots of tips coming up, so don't worry about that. And I can see some of you sharing what you do to promote your businesses. So we've got class art, flyers and social media. Actually, we've got a few people saying social media. Mayho or Maha, I think, Handmade Hurls, social media, Facebook and Instagram and the website. Shelley says social media and ad campaigns. Mary saying Instagram, Facebook again and website. And Anne-Marie Greystone's yoga therapy saying word of mouth, so something maybe non-digital there as well. So thanks for sharing those, and really great to see that we've got a mixture of people using different channels. And I hope that talking through SEO today will give you an idea of how this can fit in alongside those other channels that you're using, maybe to reach a slightly different audience. So keep your questions coming as we go through this next section. We'll have another pause at the end of this, and we're going to look at how to get started with SEO. And what SEO is, we've talked about search in general, but SEO specifically is the practice of improving the ranking of your website by making it more visible and relevant to search engines without paying for clicks or ads. So what we've seen so far is the organic results, which is what we're going to talk about now, but we've also seen the ads. We're not going to cover that as much in today's session. We will mention it briefly again shortly, but we're really focusing on those organic results, so without paying for clicks or ads here. And I would add here, as well as improving the ranking, for some of you, might be about getting shown up in search engines in the first place. Before you can even think about improving, it's making sure that Google knows you exist too. So we'll talk about both stages. Depending where you're at, you might find you're already showing up in search results and you want to work on that improvement side and optimizing. And you might find if you're newer or have a newer website, that you need to just get started by making sure that Google knows that you're out there in the first place. So some benefits from SEO, it's all about converting those visitors into customers, and search in general can help get you in front of the right people. They're people who have typed something in. They're not just browsing another website and seeing an ad there, or opening their emails at a time where they're not interested in buying. They are actively searching for something that they want to buy, or searching for a service or a business that they want to find. So they're really great. It's a really great time to get in front of those people because they're really in the right frame of mind, that they're potentially ready to buy and they know what they're looking for. They're at least looking for that initial research stage. It can therefore be very cost efficient marketing because you're getting in front of the right people at the right time as they're thinking about that product or service and going to type something into a search engine. And all of that can help you to increase your brand awareness and visibility. With SEO, we're looking at obtaining that higher position in organic search results and maybe appearing for more different combinations of words and phrases, which we'll talk about later. So that gets you more visibility as well. And all of this can then help you to increase that traffic to your website, ideally from people who are already thinking about your product and service and have that interest in potentially buying from you. So the golden rule, and we're going to come back to this a couple of times, is to think about these two sides. You're writing still for your customer. You don't want to focus too much on writing for a search engine. You just need to write so that the spider, those robots that are crawling your site, also understand the content too. So we don't want to focus on one of these over the other. They should work together. We want to write something that's useful and relevant to the customer, and we're writing it so it makes sense to them and is clear to them as well. But there's some of the technical elements happening often behind the scenes that we can make sure are in place so the search engines also understand that content. So we want to make sure we're balancing these two. And the way I would recommend getting started is to actually see where you're at right now. And one of the ways you can do this is signing up for Search Console. This is a tool that's available at no charge. You can sign in with an existing Google account, and the first thing it will do is ask you to submit your website address and verify that you're the owner or manager of that site. Once that's done, you'll be able to see how you're doing in search results. And as I said before, even if you haven't looked at SEO before, you may well already be appearing in search results anyway. If you're naturally writing content that's interesting and relevant to your customers, those pages might be showing up in search to start with. So you can see where you are right now, and you can use that as a baseline for figuring out what to improve, and also then for measuring your performance on an ongoing basis. As you put more effort and work into SEO, you can see if that's paying off. And SEO is definitely a long-term approach. So having a tool like this is really important for seeing where you are now and where you've got to over the next, hopefully, few months or so as you work on SEO as well. It can also send you alerts on any critical issues that you might need to address either urgently or in the next few weeks. So any pages that have gone missing, any issues Google's having crawling your site, or anything that just looks a bit off, things like site speed, for example, it can show you alerts on those as well. So the next step is then helping Google to find your content, submitting a sitemap. We'll talk about this again later and what that means. But effectively, it's a list or a map of all the pages on your website to help with that crawling and indexing process. So instead of letting Google just discover your site on its own, which might take some time, and then try to find all of your pages, you're basically giving it a map so it knows where to go, and that can speed up that whole process. Really important if you're a new site or if you've made a lot of changes to your site recently. You might have a sitemap even already created by your website platform that you can just submit straight away. And you can do that through Search Console. You can consider how to promote your existing content, both online and offline through other channels, but also about sharing new content. So what questions are your customers asking? What new products and services do you have that you could write content about? And content doesn't always mean, a blog post or an FAQ page. It could actually be your product and service pages as well, or your homepage. Really, any page on your site counts as content. And step 3 is that second part of this 2-step rule here. We need to make sure that Google understands it. So writing the new content is really for the users, and we need to make sure that's useful for them. But there's some things we can do to make sure that Google understands that content too. So a great way to get started, if you want one small thing that you can do, maybe even today if you have a bit of time, is to go through your page titles and check that they're accurate and unique, and that every page actually has a title. It doesn't just have default sort of page 1 or something, or the word home for your home page, for example. So they've all got page titles that are unique, accurate to that specific page, and really describe what's on the page itself. So a really quick thing you can check, you might find that all your pages that exist on your website right now are completely fine and have a great title that makes sense. If it's not something you've looked at before, or your website's been around a bit longer, you might find that some of those actually need updating. When you're creating new content, as well as looking at existing content, you can then double check those titles when you add anything new, and also think about your meta description or snippet too. So these are the 1 to 2 sentences that might appear in search results. We'll see later exactly what this looks like too. If you're not sure what I'm talking about here, we'll see an example of that. But usually behind the scenes, what's happening is there is a box somewhere that you can put a meta description into. It basically lives in the code of your site, but if you're using the majority of website platforms, they'll have a nice user-friendly box for you to write a meta description or snippet into. That could be through a plugin, for example, with WordPress, or in your page settings somewhere. So if you're not sure where to find that for your specific web platform, I would look at their support. If you've got a custom built site, you might need to ask your developer if you need to put that into the code and you're not sure where it goes. But the meta description, again, should be available for each page. It should be accurate. It should be written in sentences that a user will understand, and it should really describe what's on that page. If you have any text-heavy pages, you can use heading tags. Again, we'll look at this shortly. And that gives a bit of structure to the page, breaks the content up into different sections. And the headings for each section help both users and search engines understand what's going on in each of those sections. So if you do have longer pages or posts on your site, you might want to consider breaking that down into sections and giving each one a heading tag. So we'll come back to those and see what they actually look like later. Some top tips though for getting started: really focus on keyword research. So this is the process of discovering and understanding the words and phrases that your potential customers might be searching for. We'll talk about how to do this, but you can start off by just brainstorming. What do you think people would search for around your products and services? We're going to go through a mini activity in a moment that will help us get some ideas for this as well. Then you can consider for each of those topic areas, do you already have useful high quality content on those? Or could you publish new content or update older content to make sure it's still useful? So you can look at both new content you could write for your site as well as existing content that might need some improvements or updates. And then we want to make sure it is search friendly. So each page has that title in place, the meta description. And you're writing about the topic naturally, but you are including some of those relevant terms and phrases in there as well. Don't try to speed up this by using sneaky techniques, trying to sort of game the system. You'll hear people talk about things like keyword stuffing quite a lot. Luckily, these days, most people know that that's not the best way to go about something, just repeating a word or phrase over and over again in content. You want something that's going to read naturally to your audience. So on keyword research, what we mean by keyword is that word or phrase. So even though it's a keyword, it could be a phrase, and it could be anything from one character to actually something quite long, depending what people are typing in. And they're used to then inform everything that appears on that search results page. So both ads and these organic results that we're talking about at the moment. So if somebody was to search for a restaurant, I would love to hear, if you were going out tonight, you were able to go somewhere locally to you, but you're not sure where you want to go. How would you go about finding a restaurant? Would you just type in the word restaurant? Would you type in something specific, like a certain type of restaurant, any adjectives you would add in there? Would you add any local keywords there as well? So just think, if you had to type, maybe don't overthink it too much, but naturally, what's the first thing that you would type into a search engine if you were trying to look for a restaurant near you to go to tonight? So I'll give you a moment to type that in, and we'll come back to it in a moment and see what you've come up with. And let's talk about some other ways. So this is a great starting point. Get into your customer's head like we're doing now. Imagine we're the restaurant and we're trying to get into our customers' heads and figure out what they could be searching for just by brainstorming some ideas. So you can make lists of keywords around each specific industry term, topic, area, product or service. If you sell lots of different products, you might want to take it one sort of product range at a time and think about what people could be typing in when they're looking for that kind of product or service. You could also think about questions they might ask at different points in their customer journey. So maybe they'd be a bit vaguer at the beginning and get more specific as they go on. You can also then use keyword research tools, either as well as brainstorming, or if you're stuck with any ideas there, you could use this as a starting point. We've got the Google Keyword Planner that sits within the Google Ads platform. So that's available at no charge, but you do need a Google Ads account. You don't need to be running a campaign. You can just create the account and then use the Keyword Planner. And this will help you to see what people are actually searching for, if that matches the ideas you've brainstormed, and how many people a month are searching for that in your specific area as well. And then you can use all of this to create combinations of different words and phrases. So let's have a look at an example, and I'll see what you've come up with as well for the restaurant example too. So we're going to look at a boutique independent clothes store in Dublin. And they might start brainstorming by thinking about different keywords around clothes in their case. So fashion, clothes, designer, boutique. Maybe they could include different types of clothing there as well. People might be searching for dresses, for example, or coats or shoes. And also, because they're looking to get in front of local customers, what might those customers be typing in? Well, they might include their postcode area. They might include the word Dublin, of course, Ireland as a whole, if they're just looking for something maybe a bit further afield, they're not specifically set on it being within Dublin. And then you can combine all of these different keywords too. So let's see what you've been coming up with for the restaurant. So Rona said location and type of food. I would definitely go for the type of food as well. I think if you've got some ideas of what you want already. Piano sounds something similar actually. So vegetarian restaurant and then plus location. So you can imagine if you're a vegetarian restaurant, one of the first keywords you might brainstorm is somebody typing in vegetarian restaurant, vegetarian food, vegetarian cafe near me, or actually putting in their location area or their town or city, or even just the country. So it's a good starting point brainstorming. Do try this out for your own business as well. Try and put yourself in your customer's shoes, get some ideas, and then create these different combinations. But it's not all about the keywords. That's how Google knows that you're relevant to that topic area. But there are a lot of other factors going on in the algorithm that we talked about. And these are some that you could think about as well. Firstly, ensuring that users trust you. So trust is built in a lot of different ways. This could be around creating a great reputation for yourself, having knowledge in a certain area. It could be making sure that you're including important information on your website. So if you have any transactions happening on your site, whether that's a booking or an actual sale, or you're taking any kind of payment, you want to make sure that you have information there about how people can get in touch with you, how people can get delivery information or returns information, any kind of contact details that they would need to have to feel confident in making that purchase. You also want to think about using the right technology, so making sure you have secure payment pages, for example, maybe using a payment provider that people would recognize and trust already, so they feel more confident making that purchase. Another indicator of quality is a website that showcases its expertise and authoritativeness in that subject area. So to do this, you can make sure that your content is being created or edited by people with expertise in that particular topic. You're not just rushing out content, but really putting time in to create content based on great sources and based on your own industry knowledge. I mean, you might not be talking about something that's very educational here. Maybe it's more entertaining or funny or interesting to people instead. But either way, you want to make sure the quality of that content is high. So it should be factually accurate, clearly written, and also covering everything people might want to know about that topic area. And do avoid displaying too many ads as well. There's nothing wrong with having ads on your site, depending what type of site you have, but you want to make sure that they're not distracting from the main content and they're not stopping a user from navigating your site. Or if you have any pop-ups that sort of ask someone to subscribe to your newsletter or promote a certain product, that they're not getting in the way of people getting around the site too. So just some other factors to consider, as well as creating that content to sort of build trust, avoid any distractions, and make sure you're providing great quality, factually accurate content as well. So all of that is applicable to either global or local SEO, no matter who you're trying to attract. But let's talk a bit more specifically about local SEO, since I know, well, this is part of the Look for Local campaign, this series, but also this is likely to be very relevant to a lot of the types of businesses we have joining us today. So local SEO is kind of similar to SEO, but we're specifically trying to appear in front of local customers or people searching for something in our local area. So not just searching for buy shoes online, but searching for something that's specifically near to them. And aside from everything we've just talked about, another way you can improve your visibility in local search results is by creating a Google My Business listing. This is available at no charge. You sign up through the Google My Business platform, either at business.google.com or using the Google My Business app. It doesn't matter which you use, you'll be able to use either to edit your listing later. And it's effectively a business listing that can appear both in Google Maps and on search results. We actually saw an example earlier for that clothes shop where we could see some of those pins showing up for local clothes shop. It was Dublin, I think, for that particular searcher. So add as much detail as possible. You can add your contact details, of course, things like your address and websites. This is really for local businesses that want to showcase exactly where they are so people can come into their space, but also for any service-based businesses that might go out to people in their local area as well. So the idea is to show up on the map in your local area. You might also want to think about other listing options as part of the Look for Local campaign. There is a national directory going on, so do get in contact with your local enterprise office to join that and find out how to be part of it. And that's encouraging people to look for local when they're shopping or visiting types of businesses. But you can also look at other types of search directories. Maybe TripAdvisor would be relevant if you're in hospitality. There might be other local directories, either hyperlocal or regional, for you as well. So have a look and see what's available for you, and make sure any listings you do have are up to date with any current contact details, you're replying to reviews, and that you're including things like your up-to-date opening hours too. And pay attention to local search intent. What are people actually looking for when they search? Are they more interested in reading your menu, seeing your opening hours, finding directions? Google My Business will actually give you quite a bit of data as to how people are interacting. So are people looking to find out more about you, actually do something, buy something? There's lots of different key times where people are looking to make decisions. So deciding where to go tonight, deciding where to buy from, deciding which product to choose. So if you pay attention to the intent that's coming out of those different words and phrases they're using, that can be really helpful for deciding what the most useful content is for you to provide. So let's look briefly at SEO versus SEM, or ads versus organic listings here. We've been talking about SEO so far, so this is getting your website pages to appear more visibly in those search results. That's at no charge, so you're not paying a search engine to appear. You might, of course, pay somebody to do SEO for you, but you're not paying the search engine to appear in that space. You optimize your content around specific keywords and topic areas, and it is a longer-term approach. With SEM, or search engine marketing, in our case Google ads, but this could apply to any search engine ads, this is anything that involves paying for listings, so those text and shopping ads we saw earlier are all part of search engine marketing. And you participate in basically an auction type of process where you tell the search engine which keyword you'd like to show up for and participate in sort of automated bidding to show up in that space. So this is a more immediate process. You can show up on that first page as soon as your ad is approved. So you might choose to use a mixture of SEO and SEM to cover different topic areas where there's more or less competition. You might turn on ads at certain times of the year to get more visibility or to launch something, or you might choose to use ads as part of your ongoing strategy. You can find the balance that works for you based on your goals and also your budget. So I can see we've had a few questions come in. Mary's asking, should you put your brand name in every page title? I would recommend it. A standard sort of format is to have the page title, sort of the main theme of the page, and then some kind of separator, a dash, for example, or a pipe character, and then your business name. So your business name is appearing within every page title, but it's not the first thing that people see. So that's common practice. There's lots of different ways to create page titles, of course. But I would recommend putting your brand name in every page title if it will fit, if it doesn't get in the way of the main page title that describes what's on the page. Kenneth's asking, for photography sites, we have more images than words. Do you have some guidance as to how to achieve high rankings without so many words? We do talk about images actually in this next section coming up, so I hope that will be helpful. I'm not going to talk about it too much because I'll end up doubling up, but do share any questions you have once I've gone through that bit, if there's anything that I haven't covered or you've got more questions on. So hopefully that will be helpful coming up soon. Let's see if there's anything else. Is it true that Google can penalise you for trying to cheat your way to the top? If so, how do we find credible SEO agencies and businesses? There is a list. I don't know if Sarah will be able to find it maybe and share, but you might be able to find it yourself anyway, of sort of search guidelines and policy. So it's well worth looking through that, and that talks through all the things you should and shouldn't be doing. It doesn't give you sort of it's not meant to be an SEO guide, it's meant to be more around policy and the things that are considered to be sort of trying to cheat the system, as you put there, cheat your way to the top. And you've also said, if so, how do we find credible SEO agencies or businesses? That's a tricky one. Obviously, I can't recommend any particularly in a certain location, but I would look at understanding SEO yourself first. Coming to this webinar is a great first step. If you understand how it works, you can have those conversations with agencies and businesses offering SEO services and really know what you're looking for, understand how it works, and maybe pick up on anyone who's maybe promising to get you to the top of Google. And if you've got a good understanding of how that actually works yourself, you can probably better figure out who the right fit is for you. So I hope that's helpful. I would also recommend asking recommendations from other local businesses who've used SEO services as well that they would recommend too. That's always a great way to find business services. So we've got plenty more time for questions at the end. Do keep those coming in, but let's look at optimizing your SEO strategy. And we're going to look at two different pillars here. So we've got on-page and off-page SEO. Now, what we've been talking about so far, we haven't used the term yet, but it's really been on-page SEO. This is anything on your site, so the code and the content on your site, and making sure that they are optimized for search engines to understand. Then off-page SEO is anything that's happening off your site. You have, therefore, less control over it. This could include things like link building. You might have heard of before. This comes up quite often when we do sort of intros to SEO, or just if you've been researching it a bit, you've probably come across the concept of link building, which is getting high quality, relevant links to your site. A lot of this will be out of your control. People will link to you and you can really control whether they do or don't. We'll also look at social networks and the impact of those on SEO as well as just using social to drive traffic, of course, too. And with all of this, it's all quality over quantity. So you're really looking for building links from the most relevant sites that are high quality and trustworthy themselves. So let's start off with on-page SEO, since that's what we've been talking about anyway. We've talked already about quality and the importance of creating content that's relevant and unique for your users. Making sure it's original content is really important. That's not saying, don't cover topics that have been covered by other people, but actually creating your own written content, not grabbing bits and pieces from elsewhere. With keywords, again, we've talked about the different types of keywords you might use. We'll go into this a bit more depth in a second as well, but make sure that you are spending time on that keyword research and optimizing your content around those topic areas. With relevancy, it's important to make sure your content is up to date. If you've got blog posts that are maybe a bit outdated or aren't relevant or accurate anymore, you might want to look at refreshing those. That can be a nice quick win for SEO because you're not having to write new content. It might even just be updating one paragraph or a couple of sentences from a post a few years ago to bring it back up to date. And just make sure that all of your content is still relevant to your business as well. If you have pages and posts that are talking about products and services you no longer offer, you might want to cut those out because they're not going to bring you the right type of traffic. And it's not all about text. I've mentioned writing and text quite a lot here, but this can include images and videos and any kind of content really too. So you might have animation, maybe you've even got audio content appearing on your site as well. So with keywords, we've talked about how you can start brainstorming and also using the keyword planner tool to get some ideas. But you might also want to think about it in terms of the different types of keywords people might be using at different stages of their journey. So in this example, somebody's started off by looking for a laptop or desktop computer. They're not really sure what they're looking for clearly. The intent isn't that clear here. Are they looking to buy one now? Are they just doing that initial research? They're probably looking for a blog post or a video, some kind of advice at this stage to help them make that purchasing decision. Later on, they've decided, okay, I want a laptop, buy a good laptop. They might be looking for advice on what spec they should be looking for in their laptop, which brands might be the best fit for them. Then later on, we can see they've made that decision. They've decided to go for an HP laptop. They might even research a few different brands at this stage, or even go to something more specific like HP Envy or a specific model type or number or color or anything specific about that product that they've now decided on. So we'll have a lot more people, this is what the line is showing here, we'll have a lot more people searching for something like laptop, just the word laptop. There'll also be a lot more competition in the search results because lots of people search for things like laptop. A lot of different businesses sell things like laptops that might want to appear there too. As we get further along this curve, the number of search results will drop, less competition because there won't be as many people selling that specific model that you might sell of laptops in this case. And there will be fewer people searching for it because we've got more specific and more niche. But those people have really strong buying intent. We know that they've made this decision. They have a clearer idea of what they're looking for, and they're maybe a bit more ready to buy. And the content people will want to see at all of these different stages is completely different. It could go from a guide to buying a great laptop through to a specific product page for a certain model or things like reviews as well. So you might want to consider all these different stages. How relevant are they to what you offer? If someone's just searching for laptop, you might decide that's maybe not a great keyword for you to target because it's not specific enough for your product or service. You can consider using keywords that have different frequencies and volumes and different levels of competition. You might find that it's harder to show up in the rankings for something that is more like the word laptop, for example, but it could still be worth making sure that you're writing content about that topic area. So you can use a mixture of these and have a think about what this would look like for your own type of business. What would people start off with searching and how would they get more specific as they go? And this can be another great way of sort of structuring your keyword research. We've already talked about titles and meta descriptions and the importance of making sure that search engines understand your content. And this is kind of what we mean by writing for the spiders, the robots versus the humans. This is what the robots are seeing, the code that's happening behind your site. You might never see this yourself. And for most people these days, you'll be using a website platform that lets you just type your title into a box instead of having to mess with the code. But this is what's happening behind the scenes. We can see the title, Air Max Trainers. We've got the content description, so embrace the past, present, and future. And then we start to see the first heading tag. Of course, in real life, we would have a bit more content below that as well. And this is what it looks like when we talk about writing for the user or the customer. This is what they're seeing. So, of course, the bit at the top in red is just the search query again. That's what they've typed in. And then in the blue we have, and the green actually, we've got two examples here. We've got the page titles, that's Air Max Trainers, and then the second page title is women's Nike Air Max shoes. And then we've got the meta description for each. So this is how it looks. And when we talk about writing for the search engine and for the user, we wouldn't want to write just a list of keywords here. Yes, that might be great for search engines for that understanding, but when it comes to this view, we need it to be readable by humans. We want that sentence to make sense, both for the page title and the meta description. So make sure that it's working for both. We can see they've included the main keywords here. We've got Air Max trainers in both the headline, the page title, and the meta description, but it's also written in a way that humans would understand. Another important element of on-page SEO is also those heading tags I mentioned earlier. So structuring any longer content through using headings and subheadings. So think about what each section is about and use a heading that just makes sense, but again, makes sense to both search engines. It's including the most important keywords, but also is legible and readable for humans. This is also important for accessibility as well. Things like screen readers can use these headings to help people skip to certain sections rather than having to read through all of the text. So headings have really lots of different reasons to use them and lots of great benefits too. And I said we would come on to talking about photos and videos here. So photos are interesting because they can both contribute to a search engine's understanding of the page, the whole page, along with any other text. You know, maybe you have a few paragraphs and you've got 2 or 3 photos. Google will be looking at everything on that page to understand the content. But images can also appear in search engines themselves in the image search as well. So that's something else to consider when you're thinking about uploading images. A few important things to think about here. Do use descriptive names for your images. Don't let it stay as the default name, which is usually some kind of code or number, IMG 075. That doesn't really tell anybody what the picture is about. So use a descriptive name, like here we might go for 3 old wooden carts on grass maybe, something that is very descriptive. You can also use alt text or tags. Again, depending on your website platform, you might be able to put these in on your website itself, so you can potentially go back and add these to existing images as well as any new ones you're uploading. And this again should be something that could be used if the image doesn't appear. It should make sense to a human, but it can also help search engines to understand what the image is about as well. In terms of don'ts, if you have any older content, this is one worth looking for. Do you have anything that's using Flash? This can't be indexed by crawlers in the same way. It's unlikely you would be uploading anything new using Flash at the moment, but if you do have an older site, one that's been around for a while, just double check because that's likely to be something that's not being indexed. You might also want to avoid putting any really important text in an image. Text in an image isn't readable in the same way that standard text is. So if you have something like your menu in an image, Google's not necessarily going to be able to read the text that's on there. And avoid any large image files. Yes, you want it to be high quality, but high quality for a website is not the same as original size or original print quality might be. So you want to find the balance between it still being high quality, but maybe reducing the size of that file. And large doesn't just mean in terms of size on the page, but just in terms of image file size too. You might have something built into your computer or mobile that can help you to reduce the image size. Some website platforms will also do this for you or have a plugin that can do it, or you might use a third-party tool to reduce image sizes. So they're still good enough quality, but they're not slowing the page down too much. We've talked about this process already. So we've got the crawling, the indexing, and then the searching, sort of 3 stages here. And I mentioned at that point, we'd come back to talking about sitemap, which can help with that crawling stage, the crawling and indexing part. There are 2 different things that are referred to as sitemaps, and they are quite different. They actually have similar functions, but one is for users and one is for search engines. So it's important to know which one we're talking about. And actually, we're talking about both here, but let's talk about the HTML one first, which is for users. This is a sitemap that might appear on your website, sometimes in the footer, or you might have a sitemap page people can go to. And it helps your users to explore your site and see what's available in terms of the pages and categories that are on your site. So this is not always comprehensive. It doesn't always list every single page like an XML sitemap would. And it's more for navigation purposes, although it can be useful for sort of search engines understanding your site as well. But the one that's really for search engines is what we call an XML sitemap. So XML is the format we're using here. And you can see straight away for this one on the right, it's not meant to be readable by humans, really. It's not something you'd expect a customer to read through. It really is just for those search engines and for other technical things. So you can submit this through Google Search Console. You may well have an XML sitemap already on your site, or you might have a plugin that can create one for you. If not, if you type in create XML sitemap, you'll see lots and lots of services that will do this for you. And you can submit this to also Bing Webmaster Tools as well. So Google will obviously be looking for a sitemap through Search Console, but Bing will look for it elsewhere through its own Webmaster Tools platform. And do look at any other search engines that your customers might be using. A lot of them do have an option to submit a sitemap. So some tools that we already mentioned and some we haven't that you might want to consider, sort of your SEO toolbox. Firstly, measuring your site speed. So we haven't really mentioned this too much apart from making sure that your images don't slow your site down. But you might also want to make sure there's nothing else slowing your pages down as well. We have a tool called Page Speed Insights. This is, again, available at no charge. You just put in the URL of your page or website, and it will give you some useful suggestions, analyze the content, and make some suggestions to make that page faster. Some of them will be something you could fix yourself, like image sizes. Others might be more technical, and you might need some developer support to fix any bigger issues that might be happening behind the scenes. There's also the mobile Test My Site platform. Works in an actually very similar way, but this is specifically looking at how your website loads on mobile. Research has found that 53% of mobile website visitors will leave your site if it doesn't load within 3 seconds. So our attention span on mobile is really short. This tool will help you to see how you're getting on at the moment in terms of site speed and load speed, and also, again, any improvements you could make there. We've already mentioned some keyword planning tools. So the keyword planner within Google Ads, available at no charge, whether you're using the ads platform or not, you just need the account to sign into it. And you can find new keyword ideas as well as get the standard volumes, the average volumes of search for keywords you might have brainstormed yourself already, and see things like historical data so you can spot any search trends and patterns. If you want to look at broader consumer search trends, there's another tool called Google Trends, one of my personal favorites. If you've been to our previous webinars, you probably heard both myself and the other trainers mention this a few times. We love this platform. It's, again, available at no charge. You don't even have to sign in to Google Trends. You can choose the country you want to look at. So if you're looking at Ireland, or if you are looking at another country, you might want to tap into their market as well. And you can type in a word or phrase and see the search patterns over time. So you might choose to look at the last year or something longer term, like the last 5 years, look at results from the last 3 months or so and see how COVID has been affecting search patterns in your industry, and look for any sort of seasonal trends too. So it can help you keep up to date with any changing behaviours, any new trends, or any trends that might be dropping off as well. And you may also want some tools to help track your site's SEO performance. We've mentioned Google Search Console, Bing Webmaster Tools, and some of the site speed can help with this as well, because you can check back in on your site speed after you've made the changes. But there's lots of other tools out there too that can help you to measure your website performance. Let's talk about off-page before we come to our final Q&A and any questions you've had since the last one. With link building, this is the process of getting links to your website from other great, authoritative, relevant websites. The best way you can link build is actually not to think about the links, but just to create the content that people are likely to share anyway, content that people will want to link to, will want to share with others. So that's the best starting point, is really focusing on that content. You can also make sure you're sharing your own links on your own website, so linking to other pages, and also from things like social media or other business listings you might have as well. And you can invite people directly to engage. This could be through writing a review, engaging with people like bloggers. It could be working with press, for example, doing press releases or any kind of online PR. And again, encouraging people to link to your site. And you can also link out to relevant sites too. This is part of it. So showing that you're linking to trusted resources that are relevant to your particular industry and relevant to the topics that you're writing about. Some don'ts for link building. Firstly, don't pay for links. If you're doing that, it's more like advertising. It's not really part of SEO at all. And if you try to, again, trick search engines into thinking they're natural links, that can actually harm your findability on search as well. It can actually have a negative influence. Don't add a link to your website on other people's sites without permission. So if you're just doing something spammy, like commenting on lots of other people's posts on social media, saying great post, but then linking your website link there too. I'm sure you've all seen people do this before. Or if you're on forums and you're just posting your link everywhere, they're again not going to be seen as sort of natural or relevant links. And don't use a link exchange program where you promise to link to somebody's site if they link to yours. Again, they're not going to be the most natural links, and they're not necessarily going to be the most relevant sites either. And last but not least, social media. So social media, as well as being obviously a very strong channel for marketing in its own right, can have an impact on SEO as well. So it's something that's not happening on your site, so it does fall into this off-page category. And it can be a great source of things like reviews. You've got the chance to link to your own website, both from your profile or bio or whatever it is on that particular platform. There's almost always an option to link to your site, as well as through some posts, again, depending on the platform, whether you're allowed to link to your site or not. It can also be great for building relationships with press, vloggers, bloggers, influencers, who may then link back to your site. So getting that visibility in front of important people in your industry or influential people for your customers too. So let's see if we have any questions for our final Q&A. Oh, I can see a few have come in. Let's have a look. Okay, piano sounds. Is the alt text the same as the descriptive name for the image? So you might see alt text called a few different things depending on the website platform. I've seen it called image description before. So if that's what you mean, then yes, it might be the same thing. Quite often it will tell you if it means alt text or not. But the name, the image name, is actually the file name. So that is a slightly different thing. So do make sure you're looking at both and you understand on the platform you're using which field is for which, because they are slightly different. The image name should be something that describes the image itself. You can use the same name for both if you feel that's relevant. You do have a bit more space in the alt text. And the alt text, I would say that's the one that has to make more sense to a human, because they might see that, screen readers might use that one. So you wouldn't want that to be a random list of keywords, but you can sort of get away with that for the image name. Mary's asking, could you put the same heading in all the heading sections? Could you use the same text under heading 1, 2, 3? If you're doing that, I would say there's not much point having the separators. If heading 1 still applies and you haven't gone into a sort of subsection, there's no point repeating that same section header over and over again, if that makes sense. You don't have to have all the way down from 1 to 6 in terms of the headings. If you've just got one page title, you could just have heading 1 and leave it at that. So I wouldn't use the same headings, because that's going to make it really difficult for both search engines and users to see the difference between the different sections. So do try and make them unique within one page so people can understand exactly what's in each section. You might find that if you're finding the same heading comes up a few times, then some of the headings might actually be redundant anyway. Okay, and we have a question on translation. This is interesting. This hasn't come up for a while, actually. We have our website translated into different languages and mostly international visitors. Do we need to manage SEO for each language individually, or will it carry over with translation? I would definitely recommend obviously getting professional translators, which I'm guessing you have anyway since you've had your website translated, and looking at SEO individually for each site. Yes, some of it will carry over naturally, but people will search in different words and phrases in those different languages. There might not be a direct translation as to how people are searching. You'll also see search trends be different in different countries and different languages. So in terms of things like keyword research, I would look at doing that for each individual translation, ideally. If you don't have time to do it for all of them, focus on what you would consider to be the home language or main language first. But if you can get translators who have experience in SEO or have a separate person do some keyword research for your key extra languages as well, then that can be really helpful, because you might find that the keywords in, say, English, for example, don't naturally directly translate over to the same keywords in Spanish or French. So there won't always be that sort of exact match of a keyword in English and the same keyword is exactly what customers in Germany are using. So it can definitely be beneficial if you have the resources to put effort into SEO in the different languages, rather than just relying on translating your SEO optimized English content into other languages. I hope that makes sense. There's definitely a lot you could go into when it comes to translation. So hopefully that's a good starting point. Okay, I think that's all the questions there. Let's go into some next steps if anyone's interested in more information, further training, or just where to go next. So firstly, I said I would come back to this, google.com/small-business. This is quite new. This is the new Google for Small Business site. It's got the online success guide I mentioned earlier, so you can discover products, tools, and training. A lot of the tools we mentioned today are here as well. So if you want to come back to them later, you might find some of those useful tools in this section as well. There's also the opportunity to find some tips on things like COVID-19 as well, and some advice there too. So that link is in the description box, and Sarah, I know, shared that earlier in the chat, and I'm sure we'll share again now we're at the end too. In terms of further learning with Google Digital Garage, as we've mentioned, we've got 2 more in this series, and you're also able to rewatch the previous 2 in this series as well. If you'd like to sign up for the next one, which is on websites next week, the link for that again is in the description. I would also encourage you to get in touch with your local enterprise offices to find out more about all the things Joe was mentioning at the beginning, so the Look for Local campaign, how you can get listed in your national listings, and also any key support like that online Trading Online Voucher, if you haven't taken advantage of that yet. And if you'd like to see what else we have going on with Google Digital Garage, have a look at our website. You can also find our online courses, which are available at no charge, and these are more sort of dip in and out at your own pace courses, so not structured like the webinars, so you can go in and out of them at your own pace, and that's at g.co/digitalgarage-ie. And finally, if you do have any feedback from today's session, we would love to hear it, see what you're going to work on next, what else you would like to hear about in this topic area. That's linked in the description and over in the chat as well. Once you complete that feedback form, you'll get a link as well to download today's content and as a PDF copy, so you can revisit that. And as I've mentioned already, you'll be able to rewatch today's video too. So thanks so much for joining us today. I hope we will see you in the next couple of webinars in this series, as well as taking advantage of some of our other online resources as well. Thanks everyone, and see you next time.